For too long, we have sat back while decisions were made that affect our day-to-day. For too long, we have failed to show up at the polls. For too long, we have let terms be dictated to us instead of dictating terms to them. Let me state unequivocally, those days are over.
Tonight, our motion states, our region has failed our young professionals. And I would like to note that the presumption is that it has. Our region has failed young professionals. And we're going to introduce you to our two teams. Some amazing people already. Jacob Grohlman is a criminal defense attorney at Glenn and Hibbert, so we know he's going to be good. Jag Gray-Wall is a commercial broker at Ian Black Real Estate and has a long history in Sarasota, and I think does understand the plight of the young professional pretty well. Rymar Tirado is Chief Disruption Officer at Clear ID Labs, and I have no idea what the hell that means. What I just got to know, what are you disrupting? Okay. There you go. Debating against the motion, we have Candice McKellia, owner and president of 360 PR. Well, no, you're not Frank. Doug Grosso, you guys changed it up on me. Grosso, who's a real estate broker, associate at Dwell Real Estate, and local hero Frank Maggio, senior commercial loan officer at Centennial Bank. So I would like to invite Jacob up, and let's start to hear, but real fast, let's start to hear his comments. Just as a very quick overview of how the proceedings go. Each of the initial speakers will have 5 minutes to sort of state the case. The four remaining speakers will each have 2 minutes. The hope is that Jacob kicks off and that Frank is going to react in part to his statements and also include his own homework that he's done to evolve an answer that is then reacted upon by the other group. So I will welcome up Jacob, and let's see what happens. Let's get ready to rumble!
Let me start by saying this. I love Sarasota. I always have, and I always will. That being said, has Sarasota failed young professionals? Is that even a question? It is our position that not only has Sarasota failed young professionals, but young people in general. Housing, transportation, jobs and careers, these affect all young people, not just the professionals. And it is in these areas where this community has continued to fail young people time after time. But the blame doesn't begin and end with one group. The blame falls on the young people of Sarasota as well. For too long, we have sat back while decisions were made that affect our day-to-day. For too long, we have failed to show up at the polls. For too long, we have let terms be dictated to us instead of dictating terms to them. Let me state unequivocally, those days are over. We have known that these problems have existed for well over a decade. The real failure is that we continue to discuss the problem and no one wants to offer any solutions. And the solutions that are offered are never acted on. So that begs the question, do we really want to accomplish anything? Do we really want to make Sarasota desirable for young people? The reason we are here is because we want change and are tired of the lack of solutions. Hopefully today will not only be a debate about whether Sarasota has failed young professionals, but will be a turning point in how we address this failure with proactive solutions that have the potential to satisfy old and young alike. Let's start with one of the most glaring statistics that exist in our city. More people over 90 years old, voted in the last local election than under 30 as a percentage of their voter demographic. That is a failure of young people by young people. Young people 18 to 35 make up around 13% of the population. 77% of those young professionals have seriously or are considering leaving the community. We talked about quality jobs. 90% of minimum wage jobs nationally are held by people over the age of 20. The average income for our area is around $28,000 a year, almost $2,000 less than the national average. Out of 13,000 registered voters under the age of 40, only 500 total voted in the last citywide election. We want to give some statistics about cost-burdened housing. The average home price when the economy fell through was $147,000 10 years ago. Today, it's almost grown $100,000 to $242,000. The average cost of a 2-2 to rent, $1,950. More than half of those making $30,000 to $50,000 in our area are cost burdened by their rent, meaning that they spend more than a third of their income on their house. But the blame doesn't end there. During our argument and rebuttal, you will hear examples of how local residents and government have failed young people through anti-growth zoning codes, unnecessary impact studies, restrictive noise ordinances, and many other policies that make young people question if our presence is even wanted in the area. Let me conclude by sharing something that I've observed over the past few months, and excuse me, I'm going to quote Buffalo Springfield. Something is happening here. Whether it's the protests at 5 Points or the entry of a millennial into the Sarasota City Commission race, a change is clearly happening. This is the opportunity that young professionals and young people have to get involved and start having the city work for us instead of continuing to fail young professionals. Thank you.
All right, Jacob, thank you so much for your opening arguments. We now have Mr. Frank Maggio, who will let us know his thoughts.
Good evening, everybody. The question of whether our region has failed young professionals, I and my team here, Doug and Candace, are against this motion. It is categorically false. We're at a tipping point right now. Young professionals in this area have had a voice for about 10 to 15 years, which it has not had before in this area. As my counterpart has pointed out, young professional organizations, such as the one that Eric mentioned and I was a part of, I was actually also chair myself of, have sprung up. Numerous organizations, Sarasota Young Professionals, Manatee Young Professionals, Venice Area Young Professionals, young professional organizations from other industries, even the Sarasota Underground, which this gentleman is the Chief Disruption Officer of. From a political standpoint, young professionals are becoming active. The Joe Gruters of the world, Greg Stubeys, Christian Ziegler's. These are all individuals from the area, came back, made a difference, and have made a name for themselves, but also have shepherded the region and have seen to its future. From a business standpoint, young professionals are taking active roles. You see more entrepreneurship in the area. You see a fostering of higher wage jobs and creative jobs from the EDC and other organizations such as the Hub. Development, it's rampant. I'm in the banking industry. Several people in this room are in the realty industry and the development industry. We've had a huge boom of houses in the area. Are they all for young professionals? Certainly not. I would agree with that. I chaired an organization that certainly sought to see for a affordable or attainable housing, whatever that means. The community is doing what it can to attract, engage, and retain young professionals. I just look to my left and Candace, Doug, and myself as examples. I don't want to point out specific individuals in the community, but I'll start with us since we're the ones that are against this motion. Candace is from the area. She's gainfully employed. She's self-employed. She has a family, and she is actively involved in the community as a volunteer. Doug is not even from the area. He moved to the East Coast 10 years ago, moved to this area. He has a family, gainfully employed, active as a volunteer. Most of you, I think, know me. Actively involved in the community, gainfully employed, young professional. from an area just south of here, very similar to Sarasota County, but decided to move here. All of us are civically minded, involved. The Shelbys of this community exist, yes. But there are many more of us that actually are doing something. Thank you, Wes. Sarasota, Bradenton, this region, is never going to be all things to everybody. That is for certain. But to say that this region has failed young professionals is just not the case. Is there room for improvement? Most certainly. But has it failed? Absolutely not.
All right. Well, we've heard our opening statements from both sides. Very nice. We're now going to have Jag come up and give us a 2-minute rebuttal that is going to wow us. Okay.
Okay, so thanks. Frank, really? That's it? Come on.
I'm
Seriously,
wowed.
If we're going to have an unfiltered conversation, let's have a conversation. 23 Ringling students were part of an Oscar win. You know Oscars on Sunday night? Zootopia won 23 students.
Is that the one where La La Land won?
Am I allowed, is he allowed to, I get more time then. So here's my point. None of them live here, right? It's all kind of very, very nice conversation. How many people in Sarasota government are actually here? Anybody? Anybody? None. This is an important conversation that, yeah, and that's awesome. You know, Manatee is much more progressive than Sarasota. I've got Jamie Miller at the EDC, who's hopefully not shrinking in his chair. I'm calling him out. We haven't done enough. You know, it's a conversation that I've been here 17 years. It's a conversation that we've had for years. It's a nice idea. I bet more than 80% walked in here thinking, yeah, no, we have failed. And I'm going to show you that we've failed, and we've failed at every level. Governmentally, we've failed. The city commission has had, and the county commission has had opportunity time and again to bring companies here. The most recent one, a national roofing company called a National Roofing Company. Everybody here, all of the roofers got all weirded out about the fact that they're going to steal the jobs. But guess what? This is a national roofing company. Nobody really understood what they were doing. They were bringing 150 high-paying jobs into this area. A majority of the money that they made was not from this area, it was from the nation. And yet nobody at the chamber picked up the phone and called the local companies to say, you know what, you don't get this. This is not about stealing jobs. This is about a bigger picture. And I'm afraid, I've got 5 seconds left, nobody gets it.
Thank you, Jag. I think it's the accent. I now invite Doug Grosso from the Against the Motion team, and let's hear what you got to say.
Well, the National Roofing Company was actually, a lot of people had problem with that because they felt as though their tax dollars were going to competition. So they really didn't want to go ahead and continue to put money towards something that they felt was going to actually compete against them. So that's why a lot of that was an issue. So the statement that the area has failed is completely wrong when you go ahead and take into consideration that Florida as a whole has been leading the company in business development and job growth. And of that, Sarasota is number 2 underneath Orlando, 3 in the country underneath Orlando and Dallas. So if you go ahead and take that into consideration, yeah, we're doing something. We're actually going ahead and making good strides. So when you go ahead and take into consideration the country as a whole, and that you have 20 million men of workforce age that are out of a job, living at home, and it's the most that's been since the Great Depression, we're making great strides.
Thank you. For the next portion of the debate, I will be asking to specific teams a few questions, 3 questions. Each team will have 2 minutes to answer their question, and the opposing team will be allowed 1 minute for rebuttal. Once the team members is selected, we ask them to approach the podium to present their response. So one of my first questions is, how do you create, and I've done so much homework on this, and I used to have one opinion here and it went way over there. How is it you feel you create affordable housing? I gotta know.
What's the team? Who are you asking that question?
Oh, I get to choose? Okay, I'll choose you guys. So again, how do you feel if you had right now a magic wand that you could create sustainable, affordable housing?
So the problem with sustainable and affordable housing is that the definition varies in a number of contexts, and there's a lot of market conditions that have to do with the affordability of the housing. All I can do is attest to what has been done in the area, specifically right here in my backyard in the Rosemary area in Sarasota, where they solved some of this affordable housing problem by allowing for extra density in the region, in the area, and then never hold any of the developers accountable to actually not building any of it. So all the developers essentially dismissed the affordability component of their project, and that is the biggest problem, is that there's very little accountability between the government and the developers in this context, right? The developers are, first of all, not incentivized to create the type of housing because, of course, why wouldn't you want to build multi-million-dollar housing on beautiful real estate, either on the river or on the water, wherever it may be inside this area? It is in high demand, right? But that doesn't mean that we can't find opportunities in other areas of the community to find places where you can find that density, where you can build that density, where you can build that walkability, where you can build a cultural hub, if you will, where you can have that affordability, right? And so that's all we're looking for. We're not looking for the community to shift completely and say, we're not going to build any of these beautiful million-dollar homes because that's silly. One day I hope to afford and live in one of those. Right? What we would like to see, and the solution that has to happen, is we have to find places where we can viably bring the government together, the developers together, and the community to say, this is where we're going to start doing some of this. We're going to start experimenting with smaller units, with higher densities, with more walkable areas, places where people can also work where they live. That alleviates some of the traffic. So we have a lot of complaints about traffic, and most of that is because people cannot live in the corridors where they work. And so since you have to commute, it becomes terribly difficult to do in an area that's landlocked with no outer belt, with no thoroughfares as highways.
All right. Right. We will now hear your 1-minute rebuttal.
Sure. No, I agree actually completely with what Reimer was saying, but when you say we, I assume you mean elected officials, because when you are eliminating barriers for developers to build affordable housing, it involves electing officials who are going to work with developers and make projects that developers can build and actually make money on. They're not going to do affordable housing if they're not going to make any money. We have a lot of philanthropic developers here in our community. However, they're not philanthropic to the point where they're going to build an affordable housing community and not make any money on it. There was just a 300-plus page White House report that was issued probably about 2 months ago talking about eliminating the barriers for zoning and eliminating the barriers for elected officials to actually work with developers and make affordable housing a reality. So I think it really boils down to voting. We need to get out there and vote and elect people who are going to work with developers and not take an anti-growth stance.
Your team.
Again.
That's how it works. So let's do a little Manatee Sarasota action for just a minute, okay? 2 slightly different thought processes on, government and sort of lifestyle a bit. Which one would you say is doing a better job of retaining and cultivating that environment in Manatee County, or in both our counties?
Well, I think undoubtedly Manatee County. I went down to, my wife and I went down to the boat parade or the boat races in downtown Manatee. There were throngs and throngs of people. Everybody was excited. Nobody was complaining about, oh, the exhaust pipes are too loud on those motorbikes. I think that the Bradenton area EDC is doing an amazing job. They're going out and hunting down companies and keeping companies here. So, Sarasota EDC, as I said, the loss of that roofing company, and I kind of beg to differ with Doug there, who said that it was taxpayer dollars. Well, if we're competing with other companies or other counties, well, they moved 45 minutes north of us. And so we want to be right about that, or do we actually want to actually make a difference? Because they ended up moving to Tampa, right? So coming back to your original question, that Manatee is much more progressive, and Sarasota County has the idea. I keep saying it. It always just sounds nice, but when you get down into the weeds, I think that they're more pro-action and we are less.
All right. Your thoughts?
I didn't realize we were debating roofing companies tonight.
150 jobs, man. 150 jobs.
So what about the 150 jobs or even more that are being developed? I'm just going to pick one industry. What about craft beer, right? Just popped in my head because we're drinking beer tonight, right? So Motorworks Brewing Company, Calusa in Sarasota, J-Dubs in Sarasota, Big Top. I know there's one more in Bradenton. I'm more of a Sarasota guy. I apologize. Darwin's, but Darwin started in Sarasota, but then went to Bradenton. 3 Keys. Okay, so thank you. The people are speaking. They know. So, yeah, and Doug's correct. The regulation is a little easier in Manatee County, but I think, I understand and I appreciate the question, but I don't think it's as much as which region is doing it better, is that the region itself is actually doing very good as a whole. You see these types of companies popping up, and you see the development of these things. I think we need to get away from one county over another, one versus another. I think this needs to be a regional conversation.
That's awesome.
Glad you're paying attention.
Okay, so here we go. Against the motion. So curious, when I was coming up, maybe going out and having a huge night was a little bit more of a, concern, a little more on your mind than I feel like younger professionals have today. I don't feel like young professionals are as interested in going out and getting crazy and making nightlife a part of a determinant or a real determinant to move somewhere, okay? Would you agree that there's been a cultural shift, a generational shift over the last 10 or 15 years, and that the notion of having a noise ordinance that was so loud 10 years ago really doesn't apply today?
No, it doesn't, because they all got to go home to mom and dad. They're all living at home.
Ouch.
So, it is not. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but it's a reality. So, that's one of the things. Or they got to go back to somebody else's house because they don't have one. So that is a truism. It's not as big of an issue as when I got here initially. A lot of people wanted to go out, have a good time. You have later times that a lot of the businesses are open up till now. So no, I agree. It's not.
Well, I'm gonna take the last minute. The other thing is that when I was chair of YPG, I think I got to myself to the point to where I defended this community enough, and not just Sarasota but Bradenton as well, but defended it to the point where individuals that wanted to leave this area, I became very just apathetic to say, fine, leave, go, go to St. Pete and Tampa areas, But the reality is that there are things to do in Sarasota and Manatee County, and I think it comes down to a question of whether young professionals in your demographic actually open their eyes and realize the vast number of things that you can actually do from an arts and cultural, from a nightlife standpoint. We're never going to be Tampa and St. Pete. Right? Those of you in not just in this room, but in the community that feel that we need to be those areas, it's just not going to happen. Florida has always ever been a tourist community and has always ever been a retirement community. There are pockets of areas that exist to where young professionals, to your point, can go out, get loose, have fun and all that. It's not that you can't do those in Sarasota and Manatee County. It's just that there are vastly a lot of other things that you can do and that are very enriching and meaningful to both young professionals and older demographics alike.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like everyone to acknowledge that they're making our case for us. Whether you're in Manatee or Sarasota County, there are no options for entertainment. There are very few options, let's rephrase that. And to say or dismiss that casually, that it's not a big issue, is ridiculous, because I'm involved with both of the young professionals organizations, and it is always at the top of their list of issues that young professionals bring up about the quality of life here and the things that they are looking for. And so it's funny to joke about things about millennials living at home with their mom and dad, but that is a function of the economy that we're living in right now, not to mention that that is the overwhelming consensus in this region, because when you have an average age in Manatee County of 46 and in Sarasota of 55, you have a demographic that only knows how to make fun of millennials, because there is an overwhelming stereotype that we are lazy, that we are unmotivated, that we have absolutely no interest in doing anything other than sucking off of the teat of society. And this is not the truth. Okay, we are here, we are very loud, and we're actually trying to make a difference. The problem, it is almost impossible in this region.
Okay, thank you, Reimar, and thank you, Eric. We are actually now going to open up the Q&A to the audience, so I'm going to handle that part of it. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to do it over here. And if you'd like to ask a question of our panelists, I think it's okay if I'm over here, if you could sort of form a line here. So we're looking for people with questions to come and join me. Show your commitment. Show that you care. Okay. Thank you very much. We're pretty sure we have room for 5 questions. So if I had 2 more people, and if you come up in a moment, that's fine. Ian Black, are you coming? It looks like you're getting up. Ian's coming. Here comes. He's coming slowly, though. Give him a push. Oh, it's the wine. It's bad when the guy with the microphone knows your name. It's tough. Okay, so thank you very much. So here's the way we're going to do it. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. You can say your name if you want to say something like where you live or if you live in a certain county. And then as quickly as possible, we want to ask a question, because this is not a speech opportunity. It's a question opportunity. And I think I can leave it. We'll see how that works. I'm going to try and let you choose which team you want to send the question to. And actually, our system was, what is our system? It's 1 plus rebuttal. Isn't that the system? Is it 2 and 1? Okay, so the question goes to one side, and then the other side rebuttal, and I'll let you guys try and choose who you want. If you want to let me choose, I'll do that. So here we go. I'm going to hold the microphone, and I'll hold it for you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine. I'm with Realize Bradenton, proud to live, work, and play in Bradenton. My question is for the team sitting on the other side. For or against? The 4. And that is that how would Sarasota look different if organizations like county government, EDC, YPG, and nonprofit organizations met monthly to help figure out some of these issues? I brought some friends with me. Raise your hand if you're my friend coming from Manatee County. We've got these papers that explain some of what's going on in Manatee County to attract and retain young professionals and millennials to our community. So how would Sarasota look different if some of this was going on in Sarasota? Would it look different?
Catherine, thank you. Great question. I think it would look different if you include the elected officials and the soon-to-be elected officials in that conversation. It is, again, it is a toothless tiger to have all of these YPGs and all of these other organizations, unless you're willing to have kind of an unfiltered conversation about what's going on here. And Catherine, awesome that you brought the people from Manatee County here. Realize Bradenton is doing a fantastic job. So, so to answer that, I think it would be a fantastic idea.
And now we can hand it to the opposing side for a rebuttal.
Absolutely. I think a lot of those things are actually happening in Sarasota. And I just want to read an excerpt that someone wrote in response to Shelby Webb's article in the newspaper that I think you might all find interesting. You see, the problem with Sarasota is not the city or county commission. The problem is not the lack of affordable housing, a lack of nightlife, or even the old people who she references more than once in her article. The real problem is us. The problem is that our generation doesn't understand that we need to fight for what we want, so we become easy to ignore. Talk to any millennial downtown Sarasota on a Friday or Saturday night, and they'll probably tell you how upset they are about the lack of places to hang out and party. But ask the same person if they showed up to vote in the last city election, and you'll likely get a blank stare. And that seems to be a trend among millennials, not only in Sarasota, but across the nation. Very well-written piece that really epitomizes the problem that Sarasota hasn't failed our young professionals. Our young professionals are failing. And by the way, Raymar, great job on that article that you wrote.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you very much for the question. Okay, I'm going to turn over our next question to
Taylor Collins. I'm 31, native of Sarasota County. I've lived in both counties. My question is for the four. I'm a little concerned that nobody mentioned education. Education is the way out of poverty, period. So I'm curious what Manatee is, or Sarasota is doing for education, because that's why I chose to move back to Sarasota County. Four.
We'll send that to the for side.
Okay. So we have 15,000 students in this region, and a number of them are transient. They don't actually stick around. They don't live on campus. It's not like your traditional college environment. However, when you look at the statistics and you see how many of them leave the region because they can't find work, it becomes overwhelming to figure out how do you solve this problem without, again, a multifaceted approach, without bringing business to the table, without bringing a little bit of regulation to the table, and then without also putting the onus on the students to understand that, hey, this is also your community. Most of the students on those campuses don't understand how to plug into the decision-making process because it has not been made available to them over the years. The counter argument to this team continues to talk about the things that we have done to address this problem, which again, I will remind you, emphasizes the fact that we have and continue to fail this region. We have made some slight deviations over the last couple years, but that does not address the fact that overwhelmingly we have failed. To address the point of the students, the idea has to become that we, first of all, make it easy for them to get involved. Second of all, make them feel like they're part of the community. Third of all, give them places to live. And fourth of all, find them jobs so that they can have viable incomes and opportunities after they graduate. This idea that students are to blame or that young people are to blame, we are to blame, but what has happened is there's this negative feedback loop. The community has detached themselves from catering to or even acknowledging young people, and so young people have detached themselves from that conversation, which again feeds the loop. And we have this continual negative feedback loop, which I think the reason we're here in this room is to try to break it and to try to understand how we can make progress in that context. But again, everything we've talked about up to this point indicates that we have failed as a region, not only young professionals, but young people as a whole.
And Reimar, thank you. We'll go to the rebuttal next, but our questioner did want to clarify a portion of her question, so maybe we could add 30 seconds or something to the clock, and then we could add 30 seconds for the rebuttal as well, and just if you could clarify.
I did not mean higher education. I did mean elementary school, because if students can't read by third grade, their scores and potential drops off. So the question is elementary education as opposed to higher education.
So if you had something to add for the
Yeah, I'll add that I think that's absolutely an issue that we're dealing with, and I think that Sarasota is a bit of a microcosm of the country as a whole. We have a high concentration of Title I elementary schools in this area. We also have some of the best private schools that you can pay for in this area. And if we're going to attract both of those groups to stay in this area, then we need to address the things that we've been talking about so that we make this a magnet for them to either return after they're done with college, like I did, like a number of people in this room have done, or that they can remain through the entire time by going to one of these C4 schools, Ringling, USF, Sarasota, SCF, and New College. But I think you're absolutely right that if we don't address elementary education, having 100% of third graders reading at grade level at the time they graduate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
Pineview is the #1 school in pretty much the nation.
We'll give
Taylor,
your
you
team-
yourself, you sit
Let's
on.
give them 2 minutes.
You sit on the Education Foundation board, and you're born and raised here. You're a perfect example of young professionals becoming involved and actually seeing something done in the community. You know, I hear where you're going with elementary education, just education overall. You know, when you deal with individuals, you know, think of all of yourselves when you went to school, right? And at some point you get out and you have high aspirations. You have aspirations of what you want to do. You know, to kind of Reimer's point, or at least to counteract that, you know, it's not necessarily what we need to be doing to keep them all here. You're never going to keep them all here. I mean, I went to Florida State University. I wasn't going to stay in Tallahassee. I stayed there for a little bit, but then I decided to come back down to this area. I mean, we all make the decisions we make. There's no realistic way that we're going to keep every single Ringling College graduate. They're going to want to go to Pixar and EA Sports and all these things. They have a 94 or 95% graduation and placement rate. You know, it's tremendous. These individuals that are graduating from these colleges, you know, they're understanding what the community is. They're making their decisions. They're going off and doing their thing, and a lot of them are actually coming back. Candace is a great example of that. I'm a great example of that. There's probably numerous other people in this room that are great examples of that. It's not a question of what we have to do to plug all of them in. When you're in college, you're making a decision as to what you want to do with the rest of your life, and you make a decision as to how you want to plug in or what you want to do, how involved you want to be. There's those of us that get uber involved, there's those that don't get uber involved. It's the choices you make, and I think this region has proved that it is interested in these students. It wants to see them succeed. It has placed a tremendous investment. The SCTIs, the Manatee Technical Colleges, the Suncoast Polytech that started in Sarasota about 5 or 6 years ago. It's making that investment. It's what these students are going to do with themselves, and what they learn from the community is what shapes then their futures, but also the future of this community.
Thank you very much, Frank, and thank you, Taylor, for your questions. Or your clarified question. Hi there, and your question, your name is?
My name is Brittany, and I work with Grapevine Communication, but I'm here as a young professional in all 3 organizations, as well as Designing Daughters and other community organizations as well.
And what is your question?
I'm from Bradenton, born and raised, grew up there, went to school, came back. I now work in Sarasota, so I don't even get the opportunity to vote. However, I feel it's important to be a part of these conversations. My question is really, how do you build the bridge? It's not that we don't have the infrastructure. It's not that we don't have the amenities, the arts, the culture, the opportunity. My question is, how do you engage and how do you build the bridge that creates the opportunities, that makes people feel welcome? Again, I'm from Bradenton. I grew up, you don't cross that invisible line, you know? And in this area, I'm still very involved. I still kind of feel that way. So my question is really, how do you engage? How do you create a culture of inclusiveness? And how do you build the bridge between all these different organizations that exist but are not connecting?
And what's the invisible line?
I would say somewhere around university. I live Bayshore Gardens area in Bradenton, so again, I cross that invisible line, but getting my friends from Bradenton to go to Sarasota, or my friends from Sarasota to go to Bradenton, it just doesn't happen.
So let's send that to the oppositional side, and how would you handle that question and defend against it?
Well, I had a similar situation. When I first moved over here, I was over in Mill Creek, all the way up off of 64, and trying to get anybody down here to go up there, forget about it. So I think Reimar, I'm going to give you a nod, is extraordinary. I think what he's putting together as far as his platform for reaching out and communicating is extraordinary, and that's what we need. I mean, we've always had young professional voices in the area, but to have somewhere to go to get everybody together, they were all, I think you even mentioned this, that they were all in silos. Trying to get them all connected, it was very difficult. There were 1 or 2 people that had the emails for everybody else, but to have one spot to go is extraordinary. So to have that is one thing, but also to go ahead and have Manatee go ahead and start their development, Sarasota go ahead and start their development, and then it's going to blend. And I mean, we started to see it with the Board of Realtors. We started to see it at one point with the EDCs. It's all starting to come together because it is a regional area.
And let's have a rebuttal from the opposing side.
I started my time, I've been here since 2004. I started living in Manatee County. I now live in Sarasota County. I've been in the area for almost 13 years. I sit on both of the leadership boards of the Manatee Young Professionals and Sarasota Young Professionals, which are the two largest young professional organizations in the area. And for 10 years, I've been trying to bridge this gap, right? And so it takes us getting involved and talking to each other and doing events like this. Again, it's a symptom of the fact that we failed the region because this infrastructure doesn't exist already. We have to build it. And when you have to build something like that, then that just goes to prove the point. Because in many other cities, those infrastructures are already there. There's already the networks. There's already the collaboration between the groups, between their counties, between the government, between the private sector, blah, blah, blah. All those collaborations are there in certain places. In a lot of the cities where you see the young people thriving, the young people are rewriting the rules for how this happened because we're living in a world that many, excuse the, we're taking the gloves off here, the old people just don't get, okay? Because we're living in a technological world that's moving a lot faster than we can keep up with, and it just comes down to that, technology and connectivity.
Thank you, Reimar. Thank you very much, Brittany. If you could identify yourself and ask your question. And I'm going to stand away from the speaker.
All right, thank you. I'm Robert Stenell. I grew up in Manatee County and live there now and work with CSNL CPAs in Sarasota and Bradenton. And so my question is for the against side. You suggested that it's just an issue of millennials opening their eyes and finding things to do here. If those things exist and young professionals are unaware of them, is that a failure of marketing or outreach by the community? If they exist, what are they, and how are we making young people aware of these things so they don't feel like they have to go to St. Pete or Tampa or somewhere else entirely to find a community that welcomes them and their interests?
I can get this. I can get this. So, perfect example is something that I was very involved with when it started, which is called the Culture Collective. Something is in Sarasota County, right? So you have arts-based organizations that yourself, and I'm sure a lot of other people in this room probably look at cultural organizations and think it's just blue-haired individuals, it's too rich, it doesn't speak to me, but yet arts organizations, which are looked at historically like that, say, we know that the future is going to be in young professionals or in millennials. So what they do is they get Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and they get all up in that. But at the same time, they start to say that it's not just a case of actually just marketing to, but it's also a case of actually reaching out to and saying, we want you to get invested in something in this community. Now, you can pattern that pretty much after everything, but I'm just using that as an example to where here is a machine in the area which is generating billions of dollars in our community, not to mention billions of dollars through tourist revenue. The Sarasota Opera alone gets individuals from almost every 50 states in the entire United States and internationally, but yet they say that, hey, we want to speak out to the younger demographic and actually get them incented to understand what it is to kind of say come to the opera or go to the Oslo or go to these other arts organizations. I mean, Realize Bradenton is a great example of it, and I don't really even fully understand all of Realize Bradenton, but that is just speaking out to a younger demographic and saying that we want you to get invested in what's going on in the community.
Thank you. Frank, did that answer your question? Was that on the nose? Okay. Before we go to the rebuttal, what do you really think?
What are you trying to tell them? Well, that sounds like it's a lot of the older community trying to reach out, to their credit, and engage young professionals, but it is bringing young professionals and saying, we want you interested in the stuff we're interested in and bringing you into that.
The Culture Collective was started by young professionals. The Cultural Collective, which I was using as my example, was started by young professionals.
How many members of the Young Professionals group are a member of the Culture Collective, Frank?
About 100 or so at this point. It is actually.
Is this the structure? Is it supposed to work like this? This is good, though.
Frank, great question. I have a question for you, though, in response to that. How many times have you been to the orchestra?
Did you say Frank?
I'm sorry, Robert. Yeah, I heard Wes called you Frank there. Robert, I'm sorry. Robert, how many times? I could pose the same question to Frank, but it might be more than one.
None. With the exception of like field trips growing up here.
On your own volition, how many times have you been?
None.
This proves our point exactly.
One individual proves your point?
Can we get
How
a
many in the
share of
room
hands?
Okay.
have been to an art
Okay,
or cultural
okay, let's-
organization then?
Okay. One, keep order. Two, don't pounce on a speaker as your anecdotal proof. That is not a that's a fallacious argument, and I use the word fallacious. So you have to believe me.
This goes to exactly.
That's an okay word. I can use that in public. If you just look it up, it's an okay word. Okay, I think.
Yes, Wes.
Give us 30 more seconds of rebuttal.
While these are fantastic organizations and they are a revenue source for our community, these are not the type of social events that are going to attract and keep young people in the area. And to think that they are it's unfortunate. And it's a symptom of a greater problem. If that is what we are going to rely on, we are going to fail, and we are going to continue to fail if we do not bring additional activities that are not centered, while they might be arts-centric, they cannot be the Oslo, the Sarasota Orchestra, the ballet.
Thank you very much. Our time got a little disrupted there, but I think everyone did a good job. Thank you very much. Are you jumping in line? What's going on? Ian Black.
So I probably have the, he's asked me to be a little bit controversial. I'm not known for that, but anyway. I'm probably the oldest person in the room. I came to Sarasota in 1982, probably before a lot of you were born. So it's been interesting to listen to the debate as such. And it would appear that those who are against the motion are like for the motion. It's almost like you're almost agreeing on the same thing. So I'm not a plant. No, I'm speaking from the heart, Candace. So it's interesting. Right now, the community is facing an organization called STOP. So my question is, for both sides of the debate, do you feel that STOP is going to make the life of the young professional in our community greater and better based on their manifesto? I'm happy to go into that in detail if you like, but the general question is, would you agree with STOP and what they're trying to do in our community, to both sides?
And as far as whatever their manifesto is, which side did you want to take the question first? For or against? Is there one side who thinks that in your answer you can clarify what STOP is about?
Well, I could probably
Why don't you summarize?
Why don't you summarize, and then we'll go to the against side first, and then the for.
So basically, STOP is an organization, I think. Stop! So it's kind of like Stop with the Stop. They are against administrative review. They want to change administrative review and subject every attempt to provide what you want, which is attainable housing, affordable housing, to the court of public opinion. They are trying to use the View as an example for everything that is wrong in Sarasota, in the city of Sarasota. They are trying to convince you that the 13-year experiment with the downtown master plan is a failure. I can tell you that it has and will contribute probably in excess of $500,000 a year at least, and we haven't done the final calculations as to the financial windfall to the city of Sarasota. The question is, you know, the STOP manifesto does nothing to talk about improving the quality of life. All their propositions will deter your quality of life because they're going to stop everything. And it means that the desire for attainability or affordability in housing, which you asked the question, Eric, it's not that difficult because it is something that has been done in every other community in the country. So you've got to reduce regulations. You've got to reduce impact fees. You've got to incentivize people to develop housing. Now, I was at a conversation. Okay.
Yeah, Ian, you can come sit with us if you want.
What's the question?
Okay, I'm going to rephrase the question. If this is your first debate, every debate has someone who comes up to ask a question and gives a speech that includes the word manifesto. I think the question that is at the heart of that, he's talking about a very specific incident, but I think either side could take on the issue. We all know there are organizations that are fighting against things that young people would find of value, and there are people fighting for things that young people would find of value. How does that support or defend, support or oppose the position you have? Maybe we'll start with the for side and say when it comes to organizations like this, whose manifesto our questioner feels are very negative for young people in our community, is enough being done to stand up to an organization like that?
Okay, so I look at it.
And maybe we don't know what stop, we don't have someone from stop here, right? So let's talk about it in the contextual.
You're right. So if I looked at, I did some research about it's a little tangential, but it relates to stop. So when they studied millennials and what they wanted, the first thing wasn't jobs. The first thing was creating a sense of place, that they felt like they belonged, that they wanted to be part of, right? So I think that is the first thing that we need to create. And the people who are doing stop, all of they're saying is stop. They're not looking at, well, why? If we look at the different layers, again, there's some residents who move to the city but don't want to know what true city living is about, right? So it is more about that, are these guys helping us create a vibrant city, or is it just because they're pissed off about a building that's too tall that they see every day, that they approved of the same regulations 13 years ago or not? So, yes, I love Ian, but I don't know that stop is part of the discussion about young professionals. I think that the discussion is that young professionals should grasp this issue and say, look, it's more than just about a tall building. It's more than just about damn traffic. All right? It's more about whether we are welcome to downtown Bradenton or whether we're welcome to downtown Sarasota. That is more the question for me.
Thank you, Jag. I see Candace has the microphone and she's holding it like a sword, so we'll see what kind of response we get.
So I love your question, and I think the fact that everyone's eyes in the room kind of glazed over is very indicative of the fact that this is a tipping point, as to Frank's point, of a point in history in Sarasota where young people can really come together and take a stand against anti-growth organizations like STOP, which really, this isn't new. I moved here in 1984, and they were trying to, there was moratoriums. They wanted to put a moratorium on growth back then. But if young people really want to get involved in an issue, we have a very small vocal minority of people in this town, Sarasota and Manatee County, who are very anti-growth. It's a small group, but they're very loud on social media. They're very loud on the comment section on the Herald Tribune and on the Bradenton Herald, and they do a great job in organizing their small group and making their small voice heard, like the STOP group. Where we have, I think, failed as young professionals, not the region failing young professionals, this is young professionals failing themselves, is not understanding or not getting involved in these key issues and organizing in a way that can counteract this small vocal minority. Because if anybody can do it, it's the rhymers of the world. It's the people in this room that can really get around an issue like STOP and get people out to vote. Because someone else asked, how do we get people out? How do we bridge the gap? Sorry, it's these issues.
If you're going to run over, do it on the last rebuttal, huh?
That if we can really rally around issues like that to create more areas that are inclusive,
thank you,
then we'll all succeed. Sorry, it's my soapbox, but
Let's give a round of applause for Candace. Thank you. Ian, thank you very much for your question. Is it a?
I don't want to come back here in 5 years and have the same conversation.
Yeah.
I am looking to you, the younger professionals, to seize the moment and change the status of affairs in the city of Sarasota. It's your responsibility.
Thank you, Ian. And he's written a small manifesto he would like you all to read. Thank you. Well, that is the end of the Q&A from the audience. I'm going to hand the control of the microphone back over to Eric, and Eric will bring us into the final portion of our debate.
Thanks, Wet. Does my mic work now? Did you have him turn off my mic so I couldn't ad-lib? What the
Definitely.
heck?
No, it wasn't me.
It's crazy. It wasn't working. All right. So it's kind of upsetting. I'm pretty sure autonomous cars are going to take care of the invisible line. Because as soon as I don't have to worry about a DUI, I'll definitely drive to Manatee County to hang out, okay? All right, there it is.
I've got a card for you later.
Is that, are you, okay, well, let's hope I don't need your card, right? Not so funny. All right. Hey, we're now going to give each team 2 minutes for their closing statements. This is their last chance to sort of solidify their argument and hopefully, potentially sway your vote before we go back in for our final round of voting. So let's have Reimar come up and give us your closing statements.
Okay, so first of all, let's give it up for this side of the argument. They had an impossible task. None of them, I can tell you, if they had had choice, would have all been sitting on this side of the fence because it's almost impossible to do what they just did today, so hands up for them. I wanted to make sure we give credit where credit is due. Manatee County is light years ahead of all of us in this debate. They have understood this problem before Sarasota, and they are making changes. However, credit where credit is due, however, the fact that we just celebrated that and the fact that we're having this discussion once again points to the fact that we have failed overall. As you can clearly see, the issue at hand is not really up for debate. We've come a long way, but we still have a ton of work to do. This right here is us scrambling, trying to figure out how to do exactly what Ian just said. How do we make sure 5 years from now we're not having this same debate again? Because we have been talking about this for decades in this community, all right? All you have to do is ask a young person, any one of them. We're here on USF campus. Just ask someone. Next time you see someone on the street, ask them, has our region failed you? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Have we also failed the region? 100%, right? We have not been involved because it has not been advantageous for us to be involved because we have not felt like there's an opportunity for us to get involved. But I can tell you that that is all changing right now. And we are on the tipping point, as this team has so eloquently outlined. Right? They've done a really good job of pointing out the fact that we have acknowledged this decision and that we are making strides to move away from it. But again, that does not alleviate the premise of this debate, which is, have we, overall, as a whole, unequivocally failed young people? And just because we've made small efforts here and there, because there's a small little organization that's doing a little bit of work, or there's one cool thing that we might get to do in this town, does not mean that we have not failed as a region. Our young people are leaving in droves. There is opportunity in this community. Talk to the business owners. They cannot staff their new startups. They cannot staff their growing businesses. Young people are looking for the work that they want, and they can't find it. They can't find places to live. And I will emphasize at the end of my comments here that it is a massive responsibility for us to fix this problem, and we have to do it now.
I have so much to say, not enough time to say it. So there is so much passion in this room for this issue. And listening to everybody talk about this topic and the awesome questions from the crowd, how can that passion be indicative of failure? There are so many people invested in this issue. I've lived a lot of places, small to mid-sized cities, all over the country. This conversation is happening all over the country. Sarasota is not an isolated city where people are talking about retaining and attracting and keeping young professionals here. 16 years ago, I came back here as a news reporter. I was making $25,000 a year. I did move in with my mom and dad to get back on my feet. But then, I reinvented myself 5 times in this town. I ran for Congress. I worked for marketing and public relations firms. I started my own company, and I've created a very successful company here on the Suncoast. But look around this room. My story is not isolated at all. I went to school here in Sarasota with people like TJ Nutter, who owns a construction company, Josh Wynn. Eric Massey was my camp counselor growing up here. You may not remember that. Joe Gruters, Sean McCutcheon owns an air conditioning company, Dr. Sam Quartermain and Judge Erica Quartermain, people I went to school with, Jennifer Compton. Everyone has made a name for themselves here and are representing our generation. Look at Wes Roberts. How old were you when you started SRQ Magazine with Liesl? How old were you guys, like 12? I mean, seriously, and now they have one of the most award-winning magazines in the state of Florida. Look at Kevin Cooper. He's 35 years old, and he's the president of the Sarasota Chamber of Commerce. Christine Robinson was 34 when she was appointed to the county commission. Paul Caragiulo, Bridget Ziegler is on the Sarasota County School Board. Young people have a seat at the table in Sarasota County. We are at a tipping point in our community. We have seats at the table. All of the chess pieces are in play. The question is, where do we go from here? Where do we take it? How do we make young people feel invested and feel that they can be connected? Have we failed as a region? Absolutely not. But could we? Absolutely. It's what we do next that will decide the outcome.
Great. Candace,
Do you remember me? Be honest.
I don't remember much of anything. It's part of my problem. Thank you so much from my end. That was amazing. Some great speakers and some great thoughts that were put together. Thank you so much for coming out and exposing yourselves to the elements.
Can we get another big round of applause for all of our amazing debaters? Absolutely spectacular. These are brilliant people, and it is amazing when one after another, not just our debaters, Eric, but our questioners, Eric, everybody comes up and just throws sparks with their thoughts and the way that they present their ideas. It's just tremendous. Now it has come time for the final vote. This is where we find out if one side or the other was able to sway your decision. So we will have silence from our debaters. I will say that earlier next time. Silence. And if they make faces at you or gestures or throw you money, that counts against them, right? You can take the money, but then vote against them. They should influence you by their debating, not by other things. Now, what you're going to do, though, is go to srqmag.com/rumble2. The first time was Rumble 1. Now please go to Rumble 2. The number 2, the numeral 2. Okay. So, we'll see. What is that? Oh, thank you very much. Very good idea. Here is our motion, and you either vote for or against the motion. Do you agree? Do you vote for the motion? Do you agree that our region has failed our young professionals? Now, while everyone's doing that, I want to individually thank Eric Massey. Thank you very much for being our moderator today. If you're the applause may be anemic, but that's because people are entering their data in their phone, so they can't really applaud. So don't take that too personally. I want to thank the Bradenton Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. Thank you so much. What incredible partners. Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly Clark, for a fantastic opening to the evening. I thought that was amazing. Thank you. Once again, limited applause. People are texting, are using their phones. Also, I want to thank all of our debaters. I'm going to say everyone's names, and we'll get another big round of slight applause. Just beat your phone on your leg. Jacob Grohlman, Jag Graywall, Rymar Tirado, Candace McElia, Frank Maggio, and Doug Grosso. Thank you all so much. He also goes by Doug Grosso, but it depends on if he's being arrested or not. Okay. I've got a card for you. Yeah. Jacob up here, he goes for the business. Jeez. He's on it. So we have a little bit of time here while the voting happens. Has everyone voted? Raise your hand if you were able to vote.
Just making sure.
Thank you. They're signaling me. The winner is La La Land. La La Land is the winner. Congratulations to La La.
No. Wait. Are they done?
It takes a few minutes. So what do y'all want to talk about?
Well, how about this? How can a young professional have a sense of space when most millennials are focused on the interweb? I mean, how is it that when I am a college student and I'm taking my classes online from my dorm, that I'm creating a sense of space?
Yeesh.
No, no, no.
Eric,
Seriously.
you had that bottled up.
No.
Safe.
Yeah.
It was a sense of place. Now, let me ask you this.
I'm sorry. You're the place for space.
I don't know who's in your space.
He has a commercial.
Yeah.
But let me just say, a sense of place that, let's look at local transit. How many times have you gone out and you've seen students from Ringling or any of the colleges in downtown having a meal? Anybody? We try to have, there was a business moving down here. No, I'm serious.
I've seen him.
The votes are already in, right?
I've seen him.
I tell you what, since we have this this part of the process, the votes are done. We can't change it yet. We have a lot of young millennials in the audience. Is there anyone who'd like to come up? She just looks like she has something important to say. Are there any of the millennials in the audience who'd like to come up and share their thoughts?
Here we go.
Did it work? Is it broken? I don't know. Oh, it worked. It worked. This is the calculation here. Okay. So, interestingly, our votes when we started this evening, based on the environment in the room and a lot of comments we heard up here at the table, there was a lot of implication that we were wildly one way or the other in terms of the votes. Interestingly, our originating votes were 52% for the motion and 48% against the motion. Part of the reason it takes them a little while to get the calculation in is that the system is robust enough to figure out. For some reason, we ended up with 5 people who didn't vote the first time round and did vote the second time round, which better not be your wife. So, so we ended up with 15% or 13% undecided. So if we take into account the unofficial undecided, because it wasn't technically an option, we ended up with 45% yes, 13% undecided, 42% no. After the debate, it doesn't mean anything yet. After am I going too slow? No, I'm letting it soak in. Okay, they just want to know if they won. After the debate, there were no undecideds, which is great. No undecideds. And our vote after the debate, both sides gained percentage. So because the undecideds disappeared, one side gained 11% and one side gained 3%. And our winners were for the motion.
Even though I'm not sure that's anything to celebrate.
So a huge congratulations. You all swayed the vote 11%. You all did pretty good to sway it 3%. I mean, it's, they're losers, but it's okay. I mean, but I think adding even, I don't know, they don't get anything, so why don't I try to make them feel good? So you guys are welcome back anytime we have a debate.
Do we still get a trophy or something?
No. Keep that beer bottle. Most importantly, I want to thank the audience. Thank you all so much. You all participated. You had great questions. It was really a pleasure. I'm Wes Roberts. I'll show you all the numbers later, and we'll post them, and you can have the info. So, let me.
63 to 37, I think.
I don't want to drop that.
No, 56 to 45.
So, thank you all so very much. This production, Rumble, SRQ Rumble, is a production of SRQ Magazine. I'm the publisher with SRQ Magazine. We have enormous number of incredible events, a lot of them designed to reach out to a young and active community. Everyone's leaving. Make sure you go to srqmag.com, subscribe to SRQ Daily. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.